Dominic Breazeale is tired of waiting on the sidelines for his WBC mandatory shot. He is apparently the WBC mandatory challenger for Deontay Wilder, but we're not sure what's going on with Wilder right now in terms of who he's going to be facing next. Will it be Tyson Fury? We don't know. That's up in the air at the moment. Will it be Anthony Joshua? We don't know. If he does fight somebody before fighting a Tyson Fury or Joshua, will it necessarily be Dominic Breazeale? Because the WBC have yet to call the mandatory. They can make somebody mandatory, but that's different than actually calling for the mandatory fight to take place within a certain time period, which is something the WBC have not done yet. It's something which they apparently said they were going to do, but they haven't yet done it. So Breazeale's got sick of that situation. He doesn't want to be inactive. He has taken to calling out Dillian Whyte and said, you know what, Dillian? Let's do this. Let's me and you get in the ring and fight for the right to face Deontay Wilder in the meantime, because there's no use us both sitting on the bench waiting for our opportunity. Dillian Whyte, I've got no doubt, will jump at the opportunity to fight Dominic Breazeale. No question, because Dillian Whyte wants to become the mandatory, not the second mandatory, which is what the WBC said he would be if he fought Luis Ortiz. No, Dillian Whyte wants to be the first mandatory. He wants to be the first mandatory to get a shot. He didn't mind fighting Ortiz. This is something people have to understand. He was happy to fight Ortiz as long as the winner of that fight became the first mandatory. And the situation right now with Dominic Breazeale shows you exactly why Dillian Whyte wanted those guarantees. Because here we have the guy who's supposed to be the first mandatory, Dominic Breazeale, waiting on the sidelines for God knows how long for his shot. So if Whyte had fought Ortiz, Whyte would be waiting even longer than Breazeale. So let's say Breazeale's not going to get his shot until what? The first half of 2019? Dillian Whyte potentially could have had to wait 6 months or a year, even longer than that, to get his shot. You see, that's why he wanted to be the first mandatory, not the second mandatory. Very simple to understand. It's nothing to do with ducking or any nonsense like that. This is a guy who called out Luis Ortiz when Ortiz was signed to Matchroom. He didn't have to do that. This is a guy who called out Alexander Povetkin. This is a guy who fought Anthony Joshua. This is a guy who didn't have to fight Joseph Parker, but did. Dillian Whyte is not the cowardly type, despite what some people might want to believe. If you look at his career and look at his behavior throughout his career, logically, you know that this is a guy who is very brave. So there's an issue between him and Dominic Breazeale with regards to who the mandatory should be. If you look at the WBC rankings here, Dillian Whyte is ranked #1 with the WBC. This is where the issue is. He's ranked #1. So in his mind, he's thinking, there's no way that Dominic Breazeale should be mandatory when I'm ranked above him. That's crazy. This is why Whyte said, okay, I'll fight Ortiz as long as the winner of our fight gets the first mandatory shot at Wilder. But somehow Dominic Breazeale has got a particular deal with the WBC after the fallout of the Stavern fight. He was supposed to fight Stavern. It fell out. And he managed to secure some type of deal whereby he would become mandatory, or he would, fight a final eliminator in his next fight. His next fight was against Molina. And it's all very complicated. Let me not go through it again. But essentially, there's a dispute between who should be the first mandatory. So this proposal by Dominic Breazeale is perfect, really, isn't it? Settle the dispute in the ring. Have Dillian Whyte versus Dominic Breazeale, winner gets Wilder next. Perfect. Luis Ortiz may be a little aggrieved because of the fact he's also ranked above Breazeale. He probably feels it should be him and Whyte fighting. And that's definitely a fair complaint for Luis Ortiz to have if he comes out with that. But again, he's going to have to take that up with the WBC, just like Dillian Whyte did. So essentially what's going on here is Dillian Whyte and Luis Ortiz have got no say. But Dominic Breazeale does have a say. And if he decides to fight one of them, then that's going to be a final eliminator and the winner becomes the first mandatory for Deontay Wilder. So a good solution. Hopefully it takes place. If it does take place later on this year, probably in the UK, probably on pay-per-view, who would you guys pick in this fight? I think the momentum right now is with Dillian Whyte. He looked good against Lucas Brown. He did well against Joseph Parker, despite the fact he nearly got taken out in the 12th, but he did well. The momentum's with him. He's got some good names on his resume, but Dominic Breazeale is no pushover, okay? This is a tough man. He's got a lot of heart. He's got a lot of resilience. And many of you will remember his absolute blood and guts slugfest with Izu Ogono on Premier Boxing Champions. Was it last year? Yeah, I swear it was last year, wasn't it? That was a tremendous fight. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. And he also showed heart in the Amir Mansour fight, getting off the floor to secure a victory there. And he showed heart for as long as he was in there against AJ. He tried his best, but he was just outclassed in the end. So he's a very tough man. He always comes to fight and bring it. Very slow. He can punch, but he's very slow. And he's been down several times. He's tough in the sense that he'll keep getting up until you nail him to the canvas. But he can be dropped, just like Dillian Whyte can. Dillian Whyte is definitely the better boxer of the two for my money. I think he's faster. I think he is more fluid. I think he's got a more consistent jab. But Dominic Breazeale is a very, very big man. He's very physically strong. And he has a way of forcing you to fight. The only person he didn't manage to force to fight was Anthony Joshua. Well, to be fair, Anthony Joshua did exchange here and there with Dominic Breazeale, but Joshua got the better of it. He's a very big, strong man himself. But apart from Joshua, Dominic Breazeale has been successful in forcing all his opponents into trench warfare and getting the better of it. Will he be able to do that against Dillian Whyte? Personally, I would lean towards Dillian Whyte winning the fight. I think it's going to be a tough contest. I think it will be an entertaining contest. Hopefully there won't be too much clinching. But yeah, I would lean towards a Dillian Whyte, maybe late stoppage or points victory. That's what I would go with. Hats off to Dominic Breazeale for wanting to get in the ring and square off with Dillian Whyte, not wanting to sit on the benches and just wait for his opportunity. At the end of the day, he realizes that Dillian Whyte fought in a pay-per-view in his last fight. So him against Dillian Whyte is the next best thing to challenging Wilder. In fact, potentially, depending on the deal that he gets to face Dillian Whyte, if the fight goes ahead, if that's pay-per-view in the UK, potentially he might get more money against Dillian Whyte than he would get against Wilder. Potentially. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Dominic Breazeale versus Dillian Whyte. Who would you pick? How do you see the fight unfolding? And do you think it's a good solution to try and sort out the mandatory mess in the WBC heavyweight rankings? Let me know what you think in the comment section below, people. It's happening. I'm out.